All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our EMUE ACE webinar series. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We're on segment 15 already. So we're going to be talking about simplifying complex spreadsheets, and we also have a bunch of updates for you, all of them related to our products. So really excited to dive in and get started. Hello, my name is Dana Cortez. I am the lead EMUE trainer and analyst. I'll be running most of the webinar today. I've been with Databound Healthcare Solutions for a little bit over a year, and I'm really excited to train you guys today. Right. Also joining us today is Rachel Boles. Rachel Boles is our Boost product manager. She's been with Databound since its beginning stages. She's actually was our first employee here. And she's going to be talking today about the Boost product, and we're really excited to hear what she and her team have been working on. Just some housekeeping today. Right now, everybody is muted for the purpose of the webinar, but we will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so feel free to unmute your audio. It's on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. If for any reason you're experiencing webinar difficulties, feel free to disconnect and reconnect to the webinar. Sometimes that resolves it right away. And feel free to also check your network settings or restart your PC. If there is an issue and you can't get to the webinar today, that's okay. We're actually recording it right now, and it'll be featured on our website. And I'll also be sending out an email to everybody that was scheduled to attend the webinar. We do also have a Q&A process at the bottom of the screen. So if you do have a question in the middle of the webinar, feel free to put it in the Q&A process. And I will be checking it throughout the webinar, and I'll also check it at the end of the webinar too. All right, so on our agenda today, we're going to be talking about the common challenges with Excel spreadsheets, which I'm really excited about. And we're going to be using an example from a prior authorization process that I did a couple of months ago. And I'm excited to show you guys. I'm hoping that you'll be able to kind of relate it to the experiences that you have with Excel spreadsheets and the benefits to automating those Excel spreadsheets, which we'll also be talking about today. And at the very end, we have some product updates for you. All right, so let's dive right in. So I pasted like a couple of challenges that you guys might experience with Excel spreadsheets. It is really broad. I'll be sending out a survey at the end of the webinar. Feel free to comment in there if I missed something or if you were expecting to see something today. I'm happy to go over it with you, and I'm also happy to do another webinar for stuff that I might have missed. All right, so the first common challenge with Excel spreadsheets is that sometimes working with them, it manually increases that margin for error. Sometimes we copy data incorrectly, sometimes we paste data incorrectly or move data around. And this can also happen if you're working with large data sets, which does happen. Sometimes we have records that are 1,000 records or 2,000 records in an Excel document, and scrolling through those records it's easy to lose your place. And we'll see a little bit of that today. And working with more than one spreadsheet, you're also prone to error. The example that we have today, the client that I was initially working with, she had a spreadsheet or a workbook that had over 130 spreadsheets in the workbook. So I don't know if that's an extreme, but I know that that can kind of create an issue right there because you're working through those spreadsheets, and it can be a lot. Right, so I'm going to show you guys kind of the manual way that this process was initially done and then how we automated it. And then throughout that, I'm going to show you kind of benefits to simplifying those complex spreadsheets by using automation. So this is not the actual spreadsheet that I was given, but this is kind of an example of what it looked like. The initial spreadsheet itself had over 20 to 30 columns. And I know that sometimes there are spreadsheets where there are 20 to 30 columns. I think the most I've ever seen is around 100 columns that clients were using in EMUE and just in general. That's a lot of columns to work with, especially if you're scrolling from left to right. You could be more prone to error. And then I also want you to take note too that at the bottom of the screen, there's multiple worksheets in this workbook, which happens. We do work with those all the time. And so these are kind of representing the example of the 130 spreadsheets that were in a workbook. There's not 130 spreadsheets here, so don't worry, we're not going to go through all of those today. And then what I also want you to take note of is that in this spreadsheet, the way that the client was initially doing this, so she would look at her spreadsheet and check the authorization request and see whether or not that authorization request was a 1. And if it was a 1, that meant that it was pending. And so she would grab a reference number, go to a third-party payer site, check to see if it was still pending, and then fill in the information. So if it did change to a denial or it was approved, she would paste that back into the Excel spreadsheet and also paste a comment in there too. Now keep in mind, she was only using about 4 to 5 columns in this total spreadsheet of 20 to 30 columns. So that's something that's going to be kind of important too. We're going to talk about It's definitely a personal kind of preference, but optimizing how you use your spreadsheets is really important if you want to simplify them. You have to optimize them too. Oh, and what I also want you to take note of too, I almost forgot this piece, is that at the top here, there's 2 header rows. The first one is kind of a key to help us stay straight with the pending, denial, and approval. And then the second row is the actual column header. So first name, last name, the scheduled date, and the authorization request. And so that was kind of like the manual process that she was initially working on. As you guys can see, it's kind of a tedious process, especially once you get into 130 rows. And she was also doing this every single day. So some of you might be doing those repetitive processes every single day. And that's really important to kind of take note of that, take a mental note and be like, okay, if I'm doing this every day, what are ways that I can automate that process? So some of the benefits to automating the process is that it decreases the likelihood of human error because EMUE can catch those potential errors. Luckily, the way that EMUE works is that you can put error handling in, you can put validation in your script to handle information each time your script loops through. So if you need to check something like a date value, if you need to make sure that a reference ID, an encounter ID, or an account ID has a certain number of letters, numbers, or it doesn't look right, EMUE can actually catch that every time it loops through the script to make sure that you're getting the information that you expect. EMUE will pay the same amount of attention to the 1000th record as it did for the first record. And sometimes humans can't do that. We're really, really good at critically thinking and processing information in a different way than EMUE can. And I think that's kind of important to recognize. Also, another benefit, you don't have to do the manual work of a spreadsheet, which to me is really, really cool because sometimes, as I said, they can get pretty tedious. Automation is also a little bit faster. We'll see today that you can actually, there's a command that you can use to check an entire spreadsheet for specific information. So if you're looking for a specific value, in this instance of the follow-up prior authorization, the client was looking for a specific value of a 1 in this spreadsheet. EMUE can do that within seconds, whereas a human being, if you're looking at 1,000 records or 2,000 records, it might be a little bit harder to grab that one record that you're looking for. It might take a little bit longer. Another great benefit is that EMUE can update and create your Excel documents. So I know that for those of you who have experienced our on-site training, we do go through how EMUE can create an Excel document, but I don't think we often go through how it can update an Excel document. Oftentimes what I have seen is that a client will have EMUE do the process for them, create a work list, and then manually update their initial work list with the work list that EMUE generated, which is, yes, nice. EMUE is still doing the process automation, but at the same time, you could have it do the whole thing for you and update your Excel value. Okay, so now we're going to go over kind of the process scenario itself, and I'm going to show you like a script that I created, and we'll go through some benefits to simplifying your Excel spreadsheets. And so up here at the top, we have set startups. I'm not going to go over all the set startups today. This is just a template script that I use for all of my scripts. If you are curious about a template script, feel free to reach out to me. We do have a downloadable template script online, and we also offer too a template builder, and this template builder will build you a template script and also your folder structure. The only one that we are going to go over, because we're going to see it kind of throughout our EMUE script, is right here on line 28. So on line 28, we have set startup input file, and then we have this string. The purpose of this set startup input file, for those of you that might not know, purpose of it is to basically give EMUE a folder pathway to your input file. So it's pointing EMUE in the direction of like, hey, this is where my input file exists, and this is where I'm going to get my information from. This set startup links to right down here on line 87, the ampersand full input file name. That's a built-in variable in EMUE. So this set startup links to that and says, whenever I use ampersand full input file name, that is my input file folder. So we're going to see this throughout our script today. So that's kind of why I put it up above. I'm trying to optimize the way that I'm putting my variables into EMUE. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step through the script and get to this first command on line 78. So we're going to hit debug, and it might take a second to get there. It might not get there because I have this open. So let me close that real quick. All right. So our first line here is our create list. So I know that many of you, if you've received on-site training, you do go over create list command. It's pretty straightforward. It gives you the ability to create a list, which is really nice. What we might not go over is that there's also an additional parameter to creating a list, which is called the no verify count. We're going to go over what that means if you're like, I have no idea. So the purpose of the no verify count is that if you are working with a spreadsheet, for example, that has 20 or 30 columns, instead, and if you're only using 5 to 6 of those columns, instead of grabbing all 20 to 30 columns and pulling that into EMUE, you can grab these specific columns that you specify, which is a huge benefit. So as I said, kind of trying to figure out a way to optimize your spreadsheets from the beginning will help you in EMUE in the end. Okay. So what I'm going to show you first is the one that you've probably seen before, which is that create list without the no verify count. So that's on line 81 to 83. So I'm going to highlight this and I'm going to uncomment them. I commented them just for, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to show you kind of how this works first. So on line 81, I'm going to run this script line first. So I'm going to create my list. And you can see right here at the bottom, if I go into my lists tab, I have created a list called patient appointment list. Next, I'm going to get my Excel data. Now, for getting Excel data, it's a pretty big command in the sense that it has a lot of parameters. I'm going to run through them pretty quickly, but if you have any questions, as I said, feel free to put those questions below, or you can also let me know throughout. So the get Excel data, the purpose of that is to bring your Excel information into a list in EMUE. So we get our Excel data, we put it into patient appointment list, and then there's that built-in variable. We have to say what folder structure we're using. So we're using ampersand full input file name. And then from here, we put a query. I'm going to show you it with the colors because I feel like that's a little bit easier to see. So next we have our query, which is in red, and that's something that we're going to select from our worksheet. We're going to select everything. Right here, I've specified worksheet 1. And I want you to remember this because as we move down the script, that's going to change, and I'm going to show you a way to optimize that. So worksheet 1 is the worksheet we're going to be using. You can put worksheet 2, 3, etc., or you can put a specific name for a worksheet if you wanted to in there. Then I have to state what version I'm using. And also what's really important here too is that if you're working with an Excel document that has multiple headers, you can actually optimize that by stating how many headers exist in that file so that when EMUE brings it from the Excel file into a list, it'll get rid of those headers for you, which is really nice. So that's one way to simplify your complex spreadsheets. If you're working with them and you have multiple headers, you can bring that into EMUE and get rid of those headers. You can get rid of the extra things that you don't need. Right here, we have with header :2. And that states that there's 2 header rows. And when I bring that in, I don't want those header rows anymore. Pretty nice. So I'm going to step through that. And it's going to take a couple of seconds. Cool. Now we can see that if I pull up my patient appointment list, I have that list right here for me, and I have those 4 columns that exist. Next on line 83, I'm going to grab a specific list member. So I'm going to put all of these columns into appropriate variables. Now with the create list appointment list, without the no verify count, what it's going to do is it's going to error out here. I'm curious if you guys can see why. I'm going to tell you why, but I'm curious if you can see why. The error message that I get here is that the number of parameters 3 is not equal to the number of fields 4. So right now, I have 4 columns in my spreadsheet, and you can see that below that I have 4 columns in my list. EMUE, however, is looking at 83 where I only specify 3 columns. Now this is pretty important. So if for some reason, let's say I didn't care about my 4th column. Today, I do care about it, but let's just use our imaginations and pretend like I didn't care about it. If I didn't care about this column, it means that I would have to, no matter what, in EMUE, specify that column if I wanted to grab the whole list of information. Now, what's really great about the no verify count is that you don't have to do that. So you can optimize the information that you actually need. So let me show you again, but this time with the create list no verify count. So I'm going to delete this list for now. I'm going to do the create list no verify count, and I'm going to skip line 81 and move on to line 82 and 83. Okay, it's going to take a second. I can see that my list appeared. Now I'm going to step through and get the list member. So as you can see, it stepped right through to get the list member and didn't really care that I didn't specify this 4th column. Now this is pretty important. Obviously, as I said, it's a personal preference that if you are writing a script and trying to simplify your spreadsheet, look at your spreadsheet from the beginning and say, how can I make this easier from beginning to end? How can I optimize this even before I start scripting it? Right here, you can move all of your columns to the beginning. If those are the 5 columns that you're using, move those 5 columns to the front of your spreadsheet, and then you can grab the 5 columns that you need and not have to worry about the other 20. Now I'm also going to put a disclaimer here that you can't go around grabbing like columns 1, 10, and 20. You have to put the columns together and move them to the front of your spreadsheet. The next item here that I have is on line 87. So first what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this. I just wanted to show you that as an example, and I'm going to comment these out for now. Okay. The next item here on line 87 is a command called if file is ready. So I absolutely love this command. I use it in all of my like EMUE, all my EMUE worlds. For this, I have the if file is ready. And the purpose of this is if you're working on a spreadsheet that multiple people are working on and they have like a shared network folder or something like that, someone could have it open somewhere else. And because of that, EMUE might struggle to grab that file. At the same time, it would be the same as a human being. A human being might have trouble grabbing that file too. So the if file is ready, the whole purpose of that is to check whether or not that file is open in another place. We're going to use an example here. I'm going to actually open up the file so you can see it firsthand. So I've opened up the file, I'm just minimizing it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the command if file is ready. And there again is our built-in variable and % full input file. You can see that I'm using it from the very beginning. I'm going to run that and it goes straight to else. And that's because the file is open somewhere else. Now what's really cool here is that you can put some error handling in this section to handle that. For example, you could put a sleep in. I just put a couple of notes in here. You could put a sleep in here if you wanted to and then go back up to the top, which is on line 85. You could go back up to this label and try to run it again and see if that file is ready again. Another thing that you could do in here as well is you can have it send out an email. So sometimes if a file isn't ready and you can't view it because somebody else is viewing it, you might have to send out an email to everybody who has access to that Excel document, which can be kind of tedious. EMUE can take care of that for you. It can send an email. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to exit out of this and then we're going to run this line again so we can see the file. All right, so we're going to check if the file is ready, and this time it is ready. Our next item here is our get Excel sheet list. So this command is really cool. And I discovered this command when I started working with this process because I had to figure out a way to loop through every single sheet that existed in this workbook. And this was one way that you could do it. This command exists for the main purpose of grabbing all of the sheet names that exist in a workbook and putting it into a list for you. For those of you working with multiple spreadsheets in a workbook, this is what you could use. So what I did was I just ran that script line and it created a list for me called sheet list, which if I scroll down here, I can see. Here's the sheet list, all of it in its glory. And next what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the list count. I always suggest getting the list count. You might use it for an additional variable. You might use it for a for loop. I'm going to get the list count and there's a total of 8 sheets, not 130. Right here on line 97, we're just moving straight down this list here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to check if we're at the end of the list. So as I said, EMUE does have validation in it. So you can check to see if you're at the end of something, or if you need to check to make sure a date field is correct or a reference ID, it has that capability. So it's always good to check to see if you're at the end of the list before you try to continue processing, because EMUE won't continue processing if it's at the end of the list. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check if I'm at the end of the list, which I'm clearly not. I'm on list member 1, which I can tell from this arrow down here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to update the sheet status, which is on line 99. The purpose of update status, if you guys don't know, I absolutely love this command. I use it all the time. It's really helpful to know where you are in your process. So right down here at the bottom, it says that I'm on record 1 of 8. So it takes that list and it says what record you're on from that list, which is really nice. And it also, if you're not using the dashboard, it does update the dashboard. I totally suggest using the dashboard for everything. It updates the dashboard and tells you how your scripts are processing. And this is where that comes from. It can check the update status of your script. Right. Now on line 100, what we're going to do is we're going to do that get list member again and grab the appointment date. And so we're going to put that into a variable called appointment date. So the next item I want you to see here is with the get Excel data, there is some flexibility with how you use your query, which is really great. So up here, we grabbed worksheet 1. But down here, we're doing something a little bit different. On line 102, we're grabbing the appointment date and we're putting that in as a variable so that every time we loop through the label extract patient appointment, we're always going to be grabbing the appointment date from the list that we specify. So what that looks like, if I hover over appointment date, I can see it says 03/01/2019. That's what we want. And so I just put it in these little squiggly brackets right here. This one doesn't have any because it's not a replacement variable. If I run this script line, hit step, it generates a list for me, and it's grabbed the first set from this list. So it's grabbed the first spreadsheet in that entire workbook, which is really cool. If I go back up to extract patient appointment, it's going to grab the second sheet in that workbook. So something really nice to take away here is that there is a way to automate your spreadsheet so that you can grab multiple sheets in a workbook. And it's fairly simple. This did not take me like more than 5 minutes to do. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do, as I said, in the initial follow-up prior authorization process, they were looking to see in their list if there was a 1. If there was a 1, that meant that something was pending, and then they'd go to a third-party site. We're going to see something a little bit similar here. So in line 106, once again, I'm checking to see if I'm at the end of a list. So I'm checking to see if I'm at the end of patient appointment list. In this case, I am not. But on line 107, this is something, I don't know if you guys use FineListPosition. I use it all the time. I think it is so helpful. This command allows EMUE to go into not a spreadsheet, but goes into this list and search for a specific value, a specific variable, a specific string of information, and stop right at that string so that you can get that list member and use it. Now, it's going to do this in seconds. It's going to do it really fast. So this list does not, spoiler alert, this list does not have a 1. So I'm going to show you kind of how this looks. But you have to watch it fast. So right down at the bottom is our list. And it's going to search this entire list to see if there's a 1. And it's already at the bottom of the list. If you're looking through a list manually, it's going to take you a lot longer. One way to simplify that is just to use FineListPosition and can bring you right to where you need to be. There's also some flexibility with FineListPosition. So let's say for some reason you don't have a very specific value. Let's say that you don't have a specific date that you're looking for. Let's say you have the last name, but you don't have the first name of somebody. You can easily change this out and put a replacement variable in here. So let's say I had a variable called last name, but I didn't have a first name. I just knew that there was a comma and there might be a first name. You can put a wildcard in here, which says that any first name, as long as it's attached to this last name. So I'm going to put a little asterisk so you can see that. And then I just have to go down here and click Enable Wildcard. So what this is basically doing is it's saying, okay, you just have the last name. Now I'm just going to search this list to see if there's something with this last name in it. It doesn't have to be exact. So I think that that's really great too, and allows that flexibility in case you have some piece of the puzzle, but not the whole puzzle. We're already at the bottom of our row. So another thing that I do right after the FineListPosition, because there is a possibility that it doesn't exist in your list, is to see if you're at the end of the list again. And it looks like I am at the end of the list. In this case, down here, and we're going to see how it is when I'm not at the end of the list, so you guys will get to see that, no worries there. There is an option too to check whether or not your lists exist in the first place and either clear the list or create the list. I use this all the time in my EMUE scripts. I usually put it at the bottom, and I have like a call statement at the top of my script that goes right down to my clear lists and either checks to see if that list exists. If it does, it clears it. If it doesn't, it creates it. So I'm going to clear this list because it already exists, and then it's going to end my if statement and go back up to extract the next appointment date. So I'm going to get that. And if I hover over it, so I'm not going too fast here, guys. If I hover over it, it's 03/02/2019. So it's a different list, and we can even see that it starts with a different person. So I'm going to check if I'm at the end of the list. I'm going to do a FineListPosition. And this time my FineListPosition brings me right to the first one. So I'm going to check if I'm at the end of the list again. This time I am not. Now here's something that's pretty important. Right here on line 117, we're going to update our Excel values. As I said, this command exists and it is amazing. Update Excel value is possible, but there is a disclaimer here. You have to know where you are in your spreadsheet at all times. And that's really important. What I'm going to do, and just keep that in the back of your mind for now. You have to know where you are in your spreadsheet at all times. So what I have to do is I have to know my current list position. You have to know where your row and column is in order to fill out the update Excel value. So on line 109, I'm going to get my list position. I have to get my current row. So I get my current row. If I hover over that, it says I'm on 1. Now, if you guys remember, I said before that we had 2 header rows. So that's really important. In my Excel document, I am in a different location than I appear in my lists. That's really important to keep track of as you go through this. So that means that what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 rows to my current row. Now I'm at 3, which actually demonstrates what I'm really at in my Excel document. As I said, you do need to know your row and columns. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to get my first name, last name, date scheduled, and the authorization request. So I'm just going to grab all of these columns right here and put them into a variable. Right here, I put down on line 114, I put process the record. So we're going to use our imaginations again. I don't have a third-party site to show you guys. So we're going to pretend like we went to the website, typed in the reference ID, and we got a web authorization of a 2. Since it was denied, I want to update my existing Excel spreadsheet. Down here on line 117 is my update Excel value. I'm going to type in my variable that I want. I want the web authorization. I have to, again, use that file pathway. And then from here, I have to specify what spreadsheet I'm working from, which is why that replacement variable is also really important. And right next to it, I have my current row, which is a 3, and I have to specify the column, which is the 4th column that we would be changing. And here at the end is another parameter that's available. It's maintain cell type. So maintain cell type is pretty great, especially if you have cell types that are like really designated ones in your spreadsheet. I would say use that for everything so that nothing gets like convoluted or a number turns into a general or something like that. You don't want that. If you have something that's a date field, you want to keep it a date field. Okay, maintain cell type. It'll keep it a date field for you. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to step through lines 115 and 117 so you guys can see that. So I'm updating my Excel value. Now, if you look at this list below, it did not update, and that's okay. It didn't update in the list because the list isn't grabbing the Excel document again, but let's look at our Excel document real quick. So right here, I am now on, let me open this up so you guys can see. I am on the second spreadsheet, and I can see that the authorization request is now set to a 2, which is perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. We wanted it to change based on what the website gave to us. And what's great is that you can loop back through this. So I can go back up to patient appointment list because I wasn't at the end of that list, and I can grab the next one with a 1. So really big takeaways, I would say, for this is that to optimize your spreadsheets, as I said, I know that there are so many ways to optimize your spreadsheets and to simplify those complex spreadsheets, but really cool ways that EMUE can do it for you is that it can establish which list members take priority. So which columns are the most important to you? It'll just grab those for you so that you don't have to fill out variable names for a bunch of columns, which is really nice. It can also check too if a file is ready. If you're working off of a network share drive and other people have it open, it can check to see if it's ready, and then it can send an email. Another option that's available too, right down here, is that you can update those existing Excel values, which is really, really nice. You just have to know where you are in the Excel spreadsheet, but then that takes away your manual work. If I wanted to, I could loop back through this and it'll just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, which is awesome. And I'm not even running it at like full speed. Right. So we also, as I said, we have Rachel Boles here today, who's going to be talking a little bit about Boost. So I'm going to hand it over to Rachel so that she can give you those product updates. And I'm really excited to hear from her.
Okay, awesome. All right. So thanks, Danica. My name is Rachel Boles. I'm the product manager for Boost, which is our insurance discovery and verification tool. I have been with Databound for 12 years, so my roots are actually with EMUE. I saw a few familiar names, which is always fun for me from back when I was working more on the EMUE side. So Danica asked if I wanted to give some product updates on where we are with Boost, which I would love to do. But I also realized a lot of you probably aren't familiar with Boost, so I thought I'd do a really quick background and then tell you what we're working on now and what's coming up. So that's my plan. So a number of years ago, I was actually working on a consulting project for a facility who was concerned that they were missing insurance for some of their patients. So patients who appeared to be self-pay, they thought might actually have coverage. And so they wanted to do a test and see, you know, if we took everything out of their AR for the last year that didn't have Blue Cross on it already, what would we find if we went out and searched for Blue Cross for all of those patients? So it was a really big search. So we set up the process and ran all of that through and found that about 2% of their patients actually had Blue Cross insurance when they didn't think that they did. So they were pretty excited about that because that translates to a lot of revenue. So we did the test again, and I have some results here, with Aetna to see, okay, is this just a Blue Cross thing? And what we found was very similar, almost 2% discovery rate. So 2% of all of those encounters could be billed to Aetna, which again translated to a lot of money. So they were pretty excited and expanded this out to more payers. And at the end of the first year, they had collected $30 million in cash specifically from this process, from the encounters that we found that had insurance that they didn't think had insurance. So in doing this consulting project, we learned a few things, kind of found that are out there to verify insurance don't really provide a whole lot of information back as far as, what was wrong or, was a policy number incorrect or things like that. So that was one problem. Another is there are a lot of factors that contribute to missed insurance. So it could be you have a college student who doesn't have their card or doesn't know what insurance their parents are on and they didn't realize it. It could be someone came in for a critical care visit through, or through the ED, and, there are more important things to worry about than insurance at the time. So there are a lot of factors that put you in the situation where a patient appears to not have as much insurance as they actually do. Manual searching is just unrealistic when you're looking at thousands and thousands of encounters. So we needed something that was robust and automated. And then another thing we found is that a lot of work solutions, they have one vendor that's looking for Medicaid and another vendor doing verification and another vendor doing other piece of it. Built kind of version 1 of this, and we focused really in the tribal health because we knew there was a pretty big need for it. So the first organization we did for a 6-month period from August to the end of January has collected $8.5 million in cash. They're 173 bed facility, so kind of mid-sized. And then a smaller facility with only 8 beds has collected $1.8 million. And then another that does not have inpatient, but for a population of 65,000, they had $750,000 in cash that they collected during that 6-month period. We have been pretty excited about the results. So from this, we have had pretty good results. And like I said, we focused really in tribal health first because we knew that there was a particular need there. But then in working with more clients and talking to more facilities, we've kind of learned that the need really is there across the board. Over the summer, we relaunched our product. So we had previously called it Recover. And so we relaunched it as Boost and sort of ripped the guts out and started over to make it a lot more robust. So like I said, version 1 was tribal health. So we ripped out the guts, started over. We built a whole cloud-based platform, and we are currently doing search and discovery on it. That's working well. Originally, I was planning to show you the user interface, but it's still under construction, so I'm going to hold off until next time to show you that. And then we're looking at doing some things like adding in more robust reporting and work listing. So we're doing really active development on it. It's really exciting. I'm excited about where we're going and the results that we've seen so far. I'll keep you guys posted on where we are and what we're finding out. If anyone has questions or at all interesting to them, I'd be happy to chat and answer questions. I don't want to hijack Danica's whole webinar. So that's kind of where we are with Boost. And again, I'd love to chat with anyone if anyone is interested in finding out any more. So thanks, Danica.
And thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate you going over it and stuff. I know that you and your team have been really hard at work, so it's always really exciting to hear what you guys are working on. We've had a couple of recent EMUE updates. We've had EMUE 5.1, 1100, EMUE 5.1, 1101. So that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about, some of those updates that might be affecting you. And we also have, I put a little disclaimer at the bottom, a dashboard update. We have a couple of dashboard updates. One of them is in EMUE, and then another one involves in emails. All right, so our first one is our Click Web Cell Grid update. For this one, we used to have where you had to have a specified parameter in your Click Web Grid cell in order to click on a row. So for this one, you can see that we have the command Click Web Grid cell. We are going into the charge work list error grid, and in there, we have a specified parameter of full name and column of 1, which is what we'd be clicking on. Now, the problem with this is that it created a challenge with duplicate records. So if you had multiple first names in the charge error work list or multiple first and last names in the charge error work list, it would only ever click on the first instance of that full name. It would never click on the second one. So now you can click on the grid row itself. So you can click on, this one I was clicking on 14. I wanted to click on the second list member. I can do that, which is really, really nice. Our next one is for the if web element exists. For this one, and I don't know if you've had this experience before, but for the web element commands, none of them auto-completed. So this includes the wait for web element, the if web element exists, and if the web element allows for focused. And what I mean by auto-completes is that when you hit space and that lovely drop-down menu appears that tells you what smart names to use, that did not appear. So the challenge with this is that it was kind of like working backwards. You'd have to decide what element you wanted to click on first, go and type click web element below, and then wait for that, hit spacebar, wait for that drop-down menu, and then copy the smart name over and paste it up above into the if web element exists. It was kind of tedious to do. So now, however, and this is really exciting to me. I'm like, yay, I don't have to work backwards. So now you can do the if web element exists, and that drop-down menu will appear for you. It'll give you that smart name. And then the next item, we've added this to EMUE. The way that this was described to me, basically there were two individuals that were signing on to a single server. One of the individuals had access to a directory where an EMUE script would kick off, but another person did not have access to that directory. And because they didn't have access to that directory, even though an EMUE script was scheduled, it didn't kick off, which caused an issue because we still want that script to kick off even if that person doesn't have access to that directory. That's okay. We still want that script to keep processing throughout the day, regardless of who is on that server. So what we've added to EMUE is a task launcher configuration so that we can do that. So where this is located in your EMUE screen, it's up at the top. It's located in Tools. So you just would click Tools, and then now down at the bottom, instead of just having the Jumpstart Wizard and the Dashboard Maintenance, you now have the Dashboard Task Launcher configuration. And what this does is it opens up a little dialog box for you where you're allowed to add a user. So it would be a user that signs onto that server. And so what this looks like is you would pick a user specifically that signs onto that server. For me, I have another like login, so I had local admin. So that would be something I could add as a user, and then it would appear in the box below. And you can also remove it too, which is kind of nice if you have any turnover, or you decide that person's not going to be on that server, so they don't need to be in that task launch configuration. That's okay. All right, and then the other item that we've also added to, and I absolutely love this, is the lost connection notification. So this is an email that you receive if for some reason, if you are using the dashboard, and if for some reason it disconnects from your PC that you're using, it'll give you an email, which is really nice. And it gives you even like kind of a checklist to check whether or not your system has been shut down, whether it's performing system updates or it's disconnected from your network, or if it's having other communication problems. It lets you know that it hasn't connected in a while, so your scripts might not kick off. And I have to check in with our development team. We're supposed to receive an email when it's back on. I haven't received that email, but let me know. I'm going to be sending out a survey at the end of this. Let me know if you guys have received that email before that it's reestablished that connection, because I'm really curious. As long as you guys are receiving that email, we're okay. All right, and next I have some Claim Scout updates that were given to me from Kelly, our other product manager for Claim Scout. So he said that right now we're still in our early stages of development. We have 3 new pilot partners, which is great. If any of you guys are on the line, thank you so much. And then for our minimum viable product right now, what we're able to do, when we get clients on board and everything, we're able to retrieve claims data from clients, and then we're able to retrieve the most recent claim status available and push those results back to clients, which is all really exciting things. So as I said, our product managers and their teams have been super hard at work, and it's really lovely to see how we've kind of just keep progressing and moving forward. So that's all really exciting. So that about finishes up our webinar for today. I want to open the floor for any questions that you might have. Okay, so we have quite a great, oh wow, great. So we do have one question, actually 2. Okay, so in the EMUE script, how can you change variables to be in a color, and what is the benefit of that? So I think that you're referring to the color of changing them to orange. And so how you can do that is with those 2 squiggly brackets. So let me open that script back up so you can see that again. It's a great question. Okay, so for this one, what you can do is you can do those 2 squiggly brackets. And the reason that I put those in there to make them turn to a color of orange, that appointment date, is because now I can put it in a string, which is really, really nice. So the parameters for, let's say the parameters for GetExcel data, that appointment date, the parameters specify that it needs to be in a string. And because it needs to be in a string, that means that it's supposed to be basically just words. It's supposed to be text. But with being able to put it in those squiggly brackets, I'm able to take a variable I've already established up above and use it throughout my script as a replacement variable in those strings. It's also really, really helpful if you're doing something like FindListPosition, which I have on line 107. So if I'm doing FindListPosition and I need to not like have like a specific kind of variable or a specific text of some sort, I can put a replacement variable in there and then put those wildcards around, which are those 2 asterisks. I can put those wildcards around to be like, I don't have a specific, like a full text or a full variable, but I have this variable that I can use, and then I can put a wildcard next to it to see if there's anything that fits that kind of parameter. So I can show you what that looks like again. So if I wanted to do that, I could do like last name here. And I could put an asterisk there. And so that creates that wildcard that says, okay, I have this variable last name and I have this wildcard. So that's one of the benefits. Let me see. And how do we get access to the recording to review? That is a great question. So I'm going to be editing this recording, but I'll be putting it on our website, and I'll also be sending out an email that contains the survey. It also contains these 2 scripts, like the script that I worked on and the Excel document. And it'll also have access to the slideshow too. And I think I mentioned survey, but survey too. So you will receive all of that information. That is a great question. Oh, and then I have another oh my God, it's a great question. So sometimes lists come in with no data in one of the columns. Is there a way to hold that position when the list is populated? So now by hold position, I'm assuming you remove that list column. There is a way to do that. One of the ways to do that, if I wanted to, so if I had a whole like list, let's say I had an empty column space or an empty even like records, you could do remove blank column from the list, and then you just have to specify the list. So what that does is it cuts out all of the blank columns. Now they need to be completely blank. If there's like intermittent blank spots throughout, it won't do anything to them. But if there is like one whole column that's blank, it'll do that for you. And then there's also remove list member. So you can remove list member. You can remove blank list members. Blank list members will remove blank ones. Remove list member will remove a list member that actually is populated. So that's important to differentiate between the 2. Right, and before I forget, if you do need support, that is available. We do have support on our website. We also have new refresher training courses. So if you are new to lists, feel free to sign up for the refresher training courses. Those are available, and it kind of goes through the broad scope of lists. It goes through the broad scope of Excel values, everything. So feel free to sign up for that. We also have support too. You can put a support request in if you do have one. And we also have our community forum too, where you guys post, where we post. So feel free to do that. And you can give us a call as well. And as I said, I am sending out a survey too. I would really love your feedback. Let me know what I can improve on with this process. And also let me know if I missed anything that you guys are experiencing and how we can help. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We will talk to you later. Have a great day.